Rising from the vast, sun-scorched plains of Namibia, the Brandberg mountain looms like a sentinel of time, its granite peaks whispering secrets older than memory. Carved into its ancient rock face, hidden among a labyrinth of crevices, lies one of Africa's most baffling mysteries, the haunting figure known as the White Lady. Bathed in ochre and chalk, her ghostly form stretches across the stone, her arms raised as if in prayer or perhaps warning. Who painted her here thousands of years ago? What forgotten story does she tell? This isn't just a relic of pigment and rock. It's a riddle that has ignited debates among archaeologists, historians, and even conspiracy theorists for decades. Some say she's a shaman frozen mid-ritual. Others claim she's evidence of ancient contact with distant civilizations. But one thing is certain, the White Lady of Brandberg refuses to give up her secrets easily. Picture this, a team of explorers in the early 20th century, their boots crunching over brittle shale as they navigate the mountain's treacherous slopes. When they first laid eyes on the painting, they were stunned not just by its artistry, but by something utterly unexpected. The White Lady didn't look like the other figures surrounding her. Her posture, her pigments, even her delicate features seemed out of place. Was she a traveler from afar, a deity, or something else entirely? The controversy exploded when a prominent scholar declared she must be of Mediterranean origin, a theory that shook the foundations of African archaeology. Suddenly, this remote mountain became ground zero for a battle over history itself. Who gets to tell it, who gets to claim it, and what happens when the lines between myth and evidence blur beyond recognition? Today, the White Lady stands as more than just a painting. She's a mirror held up to our own curiosity, our hunger to unravel the past. Every brushstroke is a question. How much do we really know about the people who walked these lands before us? What stories have been lost to time, and what truths might still be hiding in plain sight? As we journey deeper into the heart of this mystery, we'll uncover the tantalizing clues, the heated debates, and the startling theories that continue to swirl around this enigmatic figure. Because the White Lady isn't just a relic, she's an invitation. An invitation to step into the shadows of history and ask, what if everything we think we know is only half the story? In the dry, scorching heat of 1918, German topographer Reinhard Mock pushed through the rugged terrain of Namibia's Tsisab Ravine, a place so remote even local guides hesitated to venture deep into its labyrinth of rock. What he stumbled upon would send shockwaves through the world of archaeology, a massive, sheltered overhang adorned with ancient paintings, among them the striking figure now known as the White Lady. Unlike the surrounding depictions of hunters and animals, this one stood out like a ghost from another time. Her pale, almost luminous form towered over the others, her body painted in delicate white and ochre, her posture poised as if caught mid-movement. With her slender limbs, detailed ornaments, and what appeared to be a Mediterranean headdress, she looked nothing like the stylized figures typical of sandrock art. Mock's sketches and notes captured every eerie detail, but when he shared his findings, scholars were baffled. How could a painting so clearly reminiscent of European or even Egyptian art exist in the heart of southern Africa? The colors had survived centuries under the baking sun, still vibrant against the weathered granite. Some suggested she was a depiction of a goddess or a traveler from a distant land. Others were convinced she had to be a later addition, an anomaly that didn't belong. The debate only deepened when experts examined her adornments, what seemed to be arm and leg bands, a possible spear, and a headpiece that some likened to those seen in ancient Crete. But the most startling theory came from those who claimed she wasn't African at all. A few vocal scholars argued the White Lady had to be the work of outsiders, perhaps explorers from the Mediterranean, or even survivors of a shipwreck who made their way inland. This idea ignited fierce pushback, challenging long-held assumptions about who created these paintings and why. If the White Lady wasn't San in origin, what did that mean for the history of the region? The controversy only grew when later expeditions uncovered more paintings hidden in nearby caves, some strikingly similar in style. Were these connected? Or was the White Lady truly one of a kind? As the decades passed, technology offered new clues. Analysis of pigments revealed the same minerals used in other local rock art, suggesting she wasn't an outsider's work after all. Yet her mystery only deepened. If she was of local origin, why did she stand apart so dramatically? Was she a representation of a spiritual leader, a ritual, or something far older than anyone guessed? Today, Mock's discovery remains one of the most hotly debated enigmas in African archaeology. The White Lady's silent gaze still challenges us, defying easy answers. Every layer peeled back reveals another question, another possibility. And as long as she remains on that rock face, bathed in ancient pigments, she'll keep drawing us back, into the ravine, into the past, into the unknown. When Reinhard Mock first unveiled his sketches of the White Lady to European academics, their reactions revealed more about their own assumptions than the painting's true origins. Many scholars steeped in the colonial mindset of the early 20th century couldn't fathom that such a sophisticated figure could be the work of indigenous African artists. Almost immediately, whispers began circulating that she must be the handiwork of a lost Mediterranean traveler, perhaps a Phoenician sailor blown off course, or even a Greek artist who'd wandered into the heart of Namibia. One prominent anthropologist at the time went so far as to claim her headdress resembled those worn by Minoan priestesses, pointing to the delicate lines and what he interpreted as a ceremonial crown. This theory gained traction not because of overwhelming evidence, but because it fit neatly into the prevailing narratives of the era. The idea that advanced artistry could only come from Europe or the Near East was a stubborn bias, one that dismissed the rich cultural traditions of the San people who had inhabited the region for millennia. Even the name White Lady itself reflects this distortion, a label applied by outsiders, focusing on her unusual pigments rather than her possible significance to those who created her. But as archaeological methods advanced, cracks began to appear in the Mediterranean hypothesis. Detailed analysis of the painting's pigments showed they were made from local materials, the same clays and minerals used in other San rock art across the region. The brushwork, too, matched techniques found in undisputedly indigenous works nearby. And then there was the sheer impracticality of the sailor theory. Why would a lone Phoenician or Greek trek hundreds of miles inland to paint a single figure on a remote cliff face, leaving no other trace? By the mid-20th century, a new generation of researchers began pushing back. They argued that the White Lady's foreign features might instead represent something far more intriguing, not a literal visitor but a spiritual vision. Among the San, shamans often entered trance states during healing rituals, encountering otherworldly beings they'd later depict in rock art. Could the White Lady be one of these supernatural figures, her elongated limbs and ethereal glow symbolizing a bridge between worlds? The debate took another turn when linguists studied oral histories from local communities, uncovering stories of pale spirits that appeared in dreams, entities described with striking similarities to the Brandberg painting. Suddenly, the White Lady's mystery deepened in a different way. She might not be an outsider at all, but a glimpse into a cosmology so rich, so complex that early scholars had missed it entirely. Today, the Mediterranean theory has been largely set aside, not just because of its shaky evidence, but because it reflects an era when archaeology was more about projecting fantasies than uncovering truths. Yet the White Lady's true story remains elusive. Whether she's a shaman's vision, a cultural exchange we don't yet understand, or something else entirely, one thing is clear. Her power lies not in fitting our expectations, but in defying them. Every time we think we've pinned her down, she slips away, a reminder that history is never as simple as it seems. Long before the first European explorers set foot in Namibia, the San people had already painted their stories across the Brandberg's granite canvas. Their rock art, some dating back thousands of years, isn't just decoration. It's a language of symbols, a window into a world view where the spiritual and physical realms intertwine. Look closely at the White Lady, and you'll notice details that tie her to this ancient tradition. The geometric precision of her ornaments, the rhythmic lines of her limbs, even the way her body seems to float between movement and stillness, these aren't anomalies. They're echoes of a visual language the San perfected over generations. Take the zigzag patterns adorning her arms and legs, for instance. Similar designs appear in other San paintings throughout southern Africa, often representing energy or spiritual power. Among the San, such motifs weren't mere decoration. They mapped the sensations shamans described during trance dances: vibrations, heat, the feeling of transformation. The White Lady's raised arms mirror countless other figures in San art too, a posture believed to channel supernatural forces or perhaps depict the moment a shaman's soul left their body to travel the spirit world. Even her seemingly foreign headdress finds parallels in local depictions of ritual leaders adorned with ceremonial items, but here's where it gets fascinating. While the White Lady shares these core elements with classic San art, she's also strikingly different. Most San figures are schematic, rendered with minimal detail. Yet the White Lady's form is elongated, almost graceful, with a level of anatomical precision that stands out. This contrast has led some researchers to propose she might represent a cultural fusion, a San artist's interpretation of an encounter with another group, or even a deliberate departure from tradition to depict something extraordinary. After all, the San weren't isolated. Trade networks stretched across Africa, and ideas traveled with them. The pigments tell another part of the story. Chemical analysis reveals the same iron-rich ochres and white clay used in other San paintings, but applied here with unusual layering techniques. Some sections were reworked over time, as if her image held such significance that generations returned to refresh it. That's a clue pointing toward ritual importance. Perhaps she wasn't just a static image, but a living part of community practice, a focal point for ceremonies or teachings. Oral histories from San descendants add yet another layer. Elders speak of ancestors who painted the people of the light, beings who moved between worlds. Could the White Lady's pale, luminous appearance be a depiction of such a figure? Without written records, we can't say for certain. But what's undeniable is this: the more we examine her through the lens of San culture, the more she transforms from an outsider's anomaly into a profound expression of a living tradition. The real mystery isn't whether she belongs, it's why her creators chose to break their own artistic norms to immortalize her in this particular way. The White Lady's elongated limbs and otherworldly glow take on new meaning when viewed through the lens of San shamanic traditions. For centuries, the San people have used rhythmic dance and natural hallucinogens to enter altered states of consciousness, bridging the gap between the physical and spiritual worlds. During these trances, shamans reported visions of transforming into animals, floating above their bodies, or encountering beings made of pure light. Could the White Lady be one of these visions captured in pigment? Her stretched proportions and luminous aura mirror exactly how shamans describe the sensation of their spirits expanding beyond human limits. Consider the plants native to the Brandberg region, species like the Nara melon and devil's claw, known to induce vivid hallucinations when prepared in certain ways. Anthropologists studying San rituals have documented how these substances warp perception, making limbs appear elongated, bodies weightless, and colors unnaturally vivid. The White Lady's flowing form, with limbs that seem to pulse beyond natural anatomy, could be a direct translation of these pharmacologically enhanced visions. Even her stark white pigment, so rare in San art, might represent the blinding light shamans describe when crossing into the spirit realm, a visual metaphor for transcendence. But there's another layer here. The White Lady isn't isolated in her cave. She's surrounded by other figures, some animal, some human, all frozen in dynamic poses. This composition echoes the communal trance dances still practiced by San descendants today, where the whole group participates, drumming and chanting to guide the shaman's journey. The painting might not depict a single figure at all, but a moment of collective ritual, the lady as the central shaman, mid-transformation, while the surrounding figures represent the community or spirits she's engaging with. Recent studies of similar rock art sites reveal something astonishing. Many paintings were created in stages, with layers added over years or even generations. This suggests the White Lady's cave could have been a sacred space where rituals were regularly performed, her image growing and changing alongside the community's spiritual practices. The pigments themselves hold clues, traces of organic binders that might have included ritual oils or plant extracts, turning the act of painting into a ceremonial act. Yet the most compelling evidence comes from the San themselves. Oral histories speak of the great teachers, spirit beings who appeared in trances to impart wisdom. These entities were often described as pale, towering figures strikingly similar to the White Lady. If she's one of these spiritual guides, it would explain her unique appearance, not a foreigner but a divine visitor, painted with deliberate difference to set her apart from the mortal world. The mystery isn't in her origins, but in the profound experience she represents, a fleeting vision made eternal on stone. The White Lady's very name suggests a certainty that this ancient figure is unquestionably female. But look closer and the details begin to unravel that assumption. Her slender form and what appears to be a loincloth initially align with traditional depictions of women in San art. Yet there's also the unmistakable presence of a bow and arrows slung across her body, artifacts typically associated with male hunters in San society. This contradiction has sparked a debate that cuts to the heart of how we interpret ancient symbols. Are we projecting our own assumptions onto the past, or is there something more complex at play here? Some scholars argue the White Lady's delicate features and draped garment point to femininity, possibly representing a fertility figure or a revered ancestor. They point to similar loincloth-clad female figures in other San paintings, often shown gathering plants or dancing. But others counter that the bow, an implement rarely, if ever, depicted with women in San art, suggests a male identity. The tension between these interpretations reveals just how much modern gender norms can color our reading of ancient imagery. Then there's the third possibility. The White Lady might not fit neatly into either category. In San cosmology, spiritual beings often transcend human classifications, embodying both male and female traits or shifting between them. The figure's elongated, almost ethereal form could signal something beyond gender altogether, a deity, a spirit guide, or a shaman mid-transformation. Some researchers note that during trance states, San shamans describe feeling neither wholly male nor female, but something fluid and boundless. Could the White Lady's ambiguous features reflect this liminal state? Even the so-called loincloth isn't definitive. Closer examination reveals the garment might actually be a belt holding ritual implements, a detail seen in depictions of male shamans elsewhere. And the bow could be something else entirely, a staff of authority, a ceremonial object, or even a stylized representation of spiritual energy. Without written records, we're left reading between the lines, interpreting symbols through lenses shaped by our own cultural frameworks. What makes this debate so compelling isn't just the mystery of the White Lady's identity, it's what it reveals about the San worldview. Many indigenous Southern African cultures recognize fluidity in gender and spirit roles far beyond binary classifications. If the White Lady embodies this complexity, she becomes not just a painting, but a challenge to modern rigid categories. Every time we try to pin her down as either male or female, she slips away, reminding us that the past often holds more nuance than we expect. Perhaps the most telling clue lies in the way the White Lady's creators chose to depict her, neither fully one nor the other, but something in between. In a culture where the spiritual and physical worlds blurred, where shamans became animals and ancestors walked among the living, maybe the very question of gender misses the point. The White Lady's power might lie precisely in her refusal to be defined. The secrets locked within the White Lady's pigments tell a story far older than her modern rediscovery. Radiocarbon dating of the paint fragments suggests she was created between 2,000 and 4,000 years ago, a span of time so vast it stretches from the height of ancient Egypt to the twilight of the Roman Empire. But what's truly remarkable isn't just her age, it's how she's endured. The ochres staining her limbs come from iron-rich deposits in the Brandberg itself, ground into powder and mixed with animal fat or plant sap to create a paste that bonded stubbornly to the granite. The whites, once thought to be chalk or even gypsum, turned out to be kaolin clay from nearby riverbeds, its fine particles giving the figure that ghostly luminosity. These weren't random choices, they were recipes passed down through generations, formulas designed to outlast time. Comparing the White Lady's pigments to other sand rock art reveals both continuity and mystery. The same iron oxides appear in nearby paintings, but hers are layered differently, applied in thin, deliberate strokes that suggest a master's hand. Traces of manganese dioxide, a mineral used for black pigments across southern Africa, appear here not as outlines but as subtle shading, creating depth where most sand art favors flat silhouettes. Even the binding agents tell a story. While many paintings used simple water or plant extracts, samples from the White Lady show traces of egg albumin, a technique more common in European cave art. Was this an innovation, an import, or something else entirely? Then there's the question of restoration. Microscopic analysis shows areas where the painting was retouched centuries after its creation, the new pigments perfectly matched to the old. This wasn't vandalism, it was reverence. Someone, or perhaps many someones, returned to this remote cliff face to renew the White Lady's presence, as if her power needed periodic reaffirmation. That discovery reshaped the entire debate. If she were merely a depiction of a foreign traveler, why would local communities maintain her across millennia? The answer might lie in the pigment's spiritual significance. Among the sand, red ochre symbolizes life force, white clay purity or transcendence. By combining them in this precise way, the artists may have been encoding a sacred message, one that resonated deeply enough to echo across centuries. The most startling revelation came when researchers compared the White Lady's mineral signature to other Brandberg paintings. While her colors matched local sources, their application didn't. The gradient in her limbs, how the white blends almost seamlessly into the rock, has no parallel in the region. It's a technique so advanced it raises an electrifying possibility. What if the White Lady wasn't an outlier but the pinnacle of a lost artistic tradition? A fleeting moment when sand painters pushed their craft to new heights, only for those methods to fade into time. Every grain of pigment holds a clue, but the full picture remains just out of reach, as enigmatic as the figure herself. The White Lady of Brandberg isn't alone in her mystery. Scattered across the globe, from the sun-baked cliffs of Spain to the monsoon-soaked caves of Australia, other pale figures emerge from ancient rock, each hauntingly similar, yet separated by oceans and millennia. Take Spain's Levantine paintings, where ghostly humanoids with elongated limbs and stark white bodies dance across the stone. Painted between 4,000 and 8,000 years ago, these figures share the White Lady's ethereal glow, their forms frozen mid-motion as if caught between worlds. Half a world away, in the Kimberley region of Australia, the Wandjina spirits stare down from cave ceilings, their faces white as cloudbursts, halos radiating like storm rings. Indigenous traditions say these beings control rain and fertility, their power so potent that repainting their images is considered sacred maintenance, not restoration. The parallels are uncanny. Like the White Lady, these figures often tower over other depictions, their pigments deliberately lighter, their postures commanding. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. None of these cultures had contact with each other. The San, the Levantine artists, and the Aboriginal peoples of Australia developed their traditions in isolation. So why do their most sacred figures share this luminous, otherworldly aesthetic? Some scholars argue its simple convergence, that humans, when reaching for the divine, naturally associate light with transcendence. White pigments, often rarer and harder to produce, would logically be reserved for the supernatural. Others see deeper threads. Trance states induced by rhythmic dancing or psychoactive plants might produce similar visions of glowing beings across cultures, explaining the shared imagery. But there's a third, more controversial theory. A handful of researchers point to these similarities as possible fragments of a shared ancestral memory, stories carried out of Africa by early humans, then adapted over tens of thousands of years. It's a tantalizing idea, though fiercely debated. After all, the Wandjana's origins trace back at least 17,000 years, while the White Lady could be 4,000. That's a gap impossible to bridge with hard evidence, leaving us with more questions than answers. Perhaps the most striking difference lies in how these figures are understood today. Where the White Lady became a colonial puzzle, her meaning debated by outsiders, the Wandjana remain living presences for Aboriginal communities, their stories passed down unbroken. The Levantine figures, meanwhile, have faded into archaeology, their creators' voices lost to time. This contrast raises a profound question. Are we projecting connections where none exist, or is there something universal about how humans visualize the sacred? The truth may lie in between. While direct cultural links seem unlikely, the recurrence of white ladies across continents suggests a collective human impulse to render the intangible in the most striking palette available. Whether shamanic visions, ancestral spirits, or deities, these figures remind us that some mysteries transcend geography. They're not just paintings, they're mirrors reflecting our shared need to make the unseen visible, to give form to the forces that shape our world. And in that, the White Lady has never been alone. The White Lady's name suggests a figure bathed in pale pigment, but the truth about her original appearance is far more complex and tangled in a web of well-meaning mistakes. When Reinhard Mach first documented the painting in 1918, his sketches showed a figure rich in warm ochres and earth tones, with only subtle highlights of white clay. Fast forward to modern photographs, and she appears almost ghostly, her limbs gleaming as if lit from within. This dramatic shift isn't the work of time alone. Early conservators, fearing the art would fade, applied layers of varnish to protect the paintings, a well-intentioned disaster. The chemicals reacted with the pigments, bleaching some areas and darkening others, while sunlight penetrating the cave's opening slowly oxidized the minerals, altering their hue. The result, a figure that no longer resembles what her creators intended. Modern imaging technology reveals what the naked eye can't see. Multispectral scans show the White Lady's pale limbs were once a deep reddish brown, the same iron-rich ochre found in other Brandberg paintings. The so-called white sections, they were likely accents, symbolic highlights rather than the dominant palette. Even Mach's sketches, often dismissed as artistic interpretations, turn out to be remarkably accurate when compared to these digital reconstructions. His careful hand recorded details later obscured. The figure's torso was originally a tapestry of red and yellow, her ornaments a vivid contrast against the rock. Those famed white limbs, they were embellishments, not the foundation. The varnish applied mid-century did more than distort colors, it erased nuance. The delicate shading between the lady's fingers, the subtle transitions in her headdress, even the texture of the brushstrokes were flattened under synthetic coatings. Conservators now recognize these interventions as catastrophic, locking moisture against the rock and accelerating decay. But the most revealing detail lies in the untouched sections. In areas shielded from both varnish and sunlight, the original pigments survive intact, proof that the White Lady was never meant to be a monochromatic spectre, but a figure of dynamic color and depth. This misconception goes beyond aesthetics. By fixating on her whiteness, early researchers overlooked the cultural context embedded in her true palette. Among the San, red ochre symbolizes life force, blood, and connection to the earth. The original painting's dominance of red over white changes how we interpret her, not as an ethereal outsider, but as a being rooted in the land's vitality. Even the kaolin clay accents, misinterpreted as evidence of foreign origins, hold local significance, used in San rituals to denote spiritual transition. Side by side, mock sketches and modern reconstructions tell two different stories. One shows a vibrant figure, her colors echoing the desert's hues. The other, a pale enigma shaped by decades of chemical reactions and fading light. The real White Lady exists somewhere between them, a reminder that history isn't static, and neither are the materials that preserve it. Every layer peeled back reveals not just pigment, but the fingerprints of time itself. The story of the White Lady's preservation reads like a cautionary tale, one where good intentions collided with devastating consequences. In the early 1950s, a team of European archaeologists arrived at Brandberg armed with stiff brushes and a mission to save the fragile paintings from what they saw as inevitable decay. Convinced that layers of dust and mineral deposits obscured the artwork's true brilliance, they scrubbed the rock face with aggressive strokes, unknowingly stripping away centuries of history. What they believed was dirt turned out to be delicate layers of original pigment, mixed with natural silica coatings that had actually protected the paintings for millennia. The aftermath was heartbreaking. Entire sections of the White Lady's intricate adornments vanished, her once vivid ochre tones dulled by abrasive contact. Worse still, the team applied a synthetic varnish meant to shield the art from moisture, a decision that backfired spectacularly. The varnish yellowed over time, trapping humidity against the stone and accelerating the very deterioration it was meant to prevent. Modern conservators face an even thornier challenge, balancing preservation with the harsh realities of Brandberg's environment. The mountain's arid climate, while excellent for preventing microbial growth, subjects the paintings to relentless temperature swings, sometimes over 40 degrees in a single day. This constant expansion and contraction of the granite causes microscopic cracks, allowing salt from ancient seabeds beneath the desert to migrate upward. As the salt crystallizes on the surface, it pushes against the pigments like tiny wedges, flaking them away grain by grain. Even human breath poses a threat. When tourists lean in for a closer look, the moisture in their exhales interacts with the minerals, creating corrosive acids that eat at the paint over time. The paradox of conservation here is that doing nothing might be the greatest risk of all. Without intervention, salt erosion and solar bleaching could erase the White Lady within centuries. Yet every attempted solution carries its own dangers. Scientists have experimented with nanotechnology, injecting silica nanoparticles into the rock to stabilize pigments without altering their appearance. But the long-term effects remain uncertain. Other proposals include climate-controlled enclosures, though these risk altering the cave's humidity in unpredictable ways. The most promising approach borrows from local wisdom. San elders have long used diluted animal fats to nourish painted surfaces, a method now being studied by chemists for its surprising effectiveness. Perhaps the most profound lesson from these controversies isn't technical but philosophical. The White Lady's fragility forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth: some artifacts weren't meant to last forever. The San artists who created her likely understood their work as part of a living tradition, one where renewal was as important as preservation. Their periodic retouching of the painting suggests they saw it not as a static relic but as an evolving testament. In trying to freeze her in time, we may have missed the point entirely. The real challenge isn't just conserving the White Lady's pigments, but honoring the spirit in which she was made, a bridge between past and present, as dynamic as the desert winds that shaped her mountain home. To understand the White Lady's full story, we must step back and examine the scene unfolding around her. The rock shelter isn't a solitary portrait, it's a tableau alive with motion. Antelope leap in frozen mid-gallop, their slender legs bent as if springing from the stone. Human figures crouch nearby, some holding what appear to be bows, others with arms raised in postures that could signal either the thrill of the hunt or the ecstasy of ritual. At first glance, this looks like a hunting scene, a snapshot of survival etched in ochre, but San ethnographies reveal a far more layered interpretation. In their cosmology, the line between hunting and healing isn't just blurred, it's non-existent. Take the antelope, for instance. To an outsider, their prey, pure and simple. But in San oral traditions, antelope are more than food. They're spiritual conduits. Shamans describe entering trance states where they become the antelope, feeling its quick pulse, its primal alertness. The animal's graceful forms in the painting might not depict a physical hunt at all, but a metaphysical one, the shaman's journey to retrieve lost or stolen life force for the sick. This idea of hunting for health is central to San healing practices. The bows held by some figures could symbolize this duality, tools for both physical sustenance and spiritual combat. Then there's the posture of the human figures. Ethnographic records from San elders describe healers dancing until their knees buckle, their arms lifted to draw down power from the stars. The White Lady's own raised limbs mirror this, suggesting she might be the focal point of the ritual, a mediator between worlds. The surrounding figures could represent community participants or even spirits summoned to aid the ceremony. Some appear to be bleeding from the nose, a documented side effect of the deep trance states induced by prolonged dancing and hyperventilation. But the most compelling evidence lies in the composition itself. Unlike typical hunting scenes where animals flee in chaotic arcs, the Brandberg figures are arranged with intentional symmetry. The antelopes seem to orbit the White Lady, their movement less like fleeing prey and more like a deliberate dance. San healers speak of entering a rope-like state during trance, a sensation of being pulled toward the spirit world. Could the antelope's arched backs and flowing lines embody that very tension? Even the pigments tell a story. The red ochre dominating the scene isn't just practical, it's sacred, representing the life force shamans seek to restore. This isn't to dismiss the hunting interpretation entirely. For the San, survival and spirituality were inseparable. A successful hunt required harmony with the natural and supernatural worlds. The painting might capture both realities at once, the physical act of tracking game and the spiritual act of restoring balance. The White Lady, then, becomes a hinge between these realms, not just a participant in the scene, but its orchestrator. Whether she's leading the hunt or the healing, her presence elevates the tableau from documentary to divine. The debate itself reflects a larger truth about San art. Their paintings weren't meant to be literal records any more than dreams are. They're layered, shifting narratives where antelope can be both meal and messenger, where a bow can loose an arrow or summon a spirit. The White Lady's cave isn't just a gallery of ancient life. It's a portal to a worldview where every stroke of pigment holds multiple meanings, waiting for those who know how to look. When European explorers first encountered the White Lady in the early 20th century, they didn't just document her. They draped her in a cloak of fantasy that said more about their own desires than her true origins. Colonial-era scholars, steeped in romantic ideals of the mysterious Orient and lost civilizations, couldn't fathom that such intricate artistry might belong to the San people they viewed as primitive. Instead, they spun tales of Phoenician sailors, Cretan refugees, or even wandering Egyptians, anything to place her creation anywhere but Africa. This wasn't archaeology, it was projection, a refusal to acknowledge the sophistication of indigenous cultures unless it could be tied to European or Near Eastern influence. The grand irony, the same explorers who marveled at the White Lady's European features often ignored or dismissed the hundreds of other sand paintings surrounding her. Her fame grew precisely because she fit a pre-existing narrative, the noble savage trope that allowed Western audiences to romanticize African art while denying its autonomy. German anthropologist Leo Frobenius, visiting Brandberg in the 1920s, went so far as to claim the White Lady's headdress resembled those of ancient Greek priestesses, despite having no expertise in sand culture. His writings, widely circulated in Europe, cemented her as an outsider in her own land, a theme echoed in popular travelogues that described her as hauntingly out of place. This exoticization had real consequences. By framing the White Lady as a Mediterranean visitor, early researchers diverted attention from the living traditions that might have explained her. San elders, when asked about the painting by later ethnographers, shared stories of spirit beings matching her description accounts that had been overlooked or dismissed as folklore. Even the name White Lady itself reflects this bias, reducing a figure rich in cultural meaning to a superficial descriptor focused on her most un-African trait. The legacy of this distortion lingers. Museum displays and mid-century archaeology textbooks often isolated the White Lady from other San art, presenting her as an anomaly rather than part of a continuum. Only in recent decades have researchers begun untangling these assumptions, using pigment analysis and indigenous oral histories to recenter her story. Yet the romantic ideal dies hard. Tourism sites still promote her as Africa's Mona Lisa, a comparison that, however flattering, still frames her through a European lens. What gets lost in this mystification is the White Lady's true power, not as a riddle to be solved by outsiders, but as a testament to San artistic innovation. Her creators didn't need foreign influence to produce masterpieces. They had their own cosmology, their own techniques, their own genius. Every time we strip away the layers of colonial fantasy, we find something far more extraordinary, an artist, or perhaps many artists, who chose this remote cliff face to articulate a vision so profound it still captivates us today. The real mystery isn't who painted her, but why we ever doubted they were African. In the shadow of Brandberg Mountain, a quiet revolution is unfolding, one that challenges a century of colonial interpretations and centers the voices of those who have lived with the White Lady's story for generations. Contemporary San activists and scholars are reclaiming the narrative, not with brushes or pigments, but with something far more powerful, the living memory of oral tradition. Elders from the Hatem and Jatonsi communities speak of the White Lady not as a foreign visitor, but as Letter 1 C0 Ku, a rainmaker spirit who emerges during times of drought, her outstretched arms summoning clouds from the barren sky. These stories, passed down through countless generations, paint a picture radically different from the Mediterranean theories that once dominated academia. One such custodian of knowledge is Tsisab, a Hatem elder whose grandfather taught him the stories of Brandberg's painted spirits. In interviews, he describes how Letter 1 C0 Ku appears in visions during healing dances, her white form shimmering like distant lightning. She doesn't belong to the past, he insists. When the land thirsts, we still sing to her. This perspective transforms the White Lady from an archaeological curiosity into a living presence, a being whose power extends beyond pigment and stone. For the San, the act of repainting sacred images was never about preservation in the Western sense. It was a dialogue with the unseen, a way to renew the bond between the physical and spiritual worlds. The push for reclamation isn't just philosophical, it's practical. Activists like Esther Muanjang, a Namibian heritage advocate, have spearheaded efforts to include San voices in conservation decisions. Under her guidance, community elders now consult with scientists on pigment analysis, offering insights that lab tests alone could never reveal. When researchers discovered traces of honeybee wax mixed into the White Lady's paint, a detail missed in earlier studies, San elders immediately recognized its significance. Honey plays a central role in rainmaking rituals, symbolizing the sweetness of life returning to parched earth. But the battle goes deeper than interpretation. For decades, the White Lady's image was commodified, printed on postcards, tour brochures, even beer labels without consultation or compensation for the San. Today, artists like Letter 1, C0 Kuntabu, a Juthonsi painter, are flipping the script. His contemporary works reimagine the White Lady not as a relic, but as a vibrant participant in modern San life, her arms cradling solar panels or smartphones. Our ancestors were scientists, he explains. If they had today's tools, they'd use them. Why shouldn't she? Perhaps the most poignant reclamation happens each year during the rains, when San families gather near Brandberg to perform the Letter 1 C0 coup dance. Children, many of whom once learned about the White Lady through colonial textbooks, now enact the stories of their great-grandparents, their small hands tracing the same gestures painted on the cave walls millennia ago. In these moments, the distance between past and present collapses, and the White Lady's true legacy comes alive, not as a puzzle for outsiders to solve, but as a testament to resilience, a spirit who refuses to be silenced. The mountain may hold her image, but her story belongs to the people who never stopped telling it. Brandberg's rugged beauty and the haunting presence of the White Lady have drawn travelers for decades, but this fascination comes at a cost. Footsteps, once rare in these remote cliffs, now echo daily as tourists scramble over delicate sandstone, their hands brushing against ancient paintings in pursuit of the perfect photo. In the 1990s, guides began noticing something alarming: faint scratches near the White Lady's form, not from time but pocket knives. Initials, dates, even crude symbols had been carved into the rock by visitors desperate to leave their mark on history. The damage didn't stop there. Flash photography, once permitted, slowly bleached pigments that had survived millennia. The moisture from countless breaths condensed on the rock face, creating a corrosive film that eats away at the paint's delicate binders. Even the natural oils on human fingers, harmless in small doses, accumulate into a greasy patina that obscures details and attracts dust. Recognizing the crisis, UNESCO stepped in, declaring Brandberg a World Heritage Site in 2007. Their preservation plan was radical: no more than 20 visitors per day, accompanied by trained San guides who enforce strict no-touch, no-flash rules. Solar-powered microclimate sensors now monitor humidity and temperature shifts, alerting conservators to dangerous conditions. But the most ingenious solution came from the local Hatem community. Drawing on ancestral knowledge, they suggested coating vulnerable areas with a thin layer of natural resin derived from the Nara plant, a traditional sealant that breathes like the original pigments, unlike synthetic varnishes that suffocate the stone. Early tests show it reduces salt crystallization by nearly 70%. Yet preservation isn't just about restrictions, it's about reimagining access. 3 years ago, a team from Namibia's National Heritage Council partnered with digital archaeologists to create an immersive virtual tour. Using LiDAR scanning and multispectral imaging, they reconstructed the White Lady's cave down to the grain of the rock, allowing online visitors to examine brushstrokes invisible to the naked eye. On-site, augmented reality glasses now overlay the original vibrant colors onto the faded paintings, letting tourists experience the art as its creators intended. Some San elders were initially wary, fearing technology might sever the spiritual connection. But when young community members began using these tools to teach children ancestral stories, attitudes shifted. The paintings are not just pictures, explains guide Karo Hatuwaisab. They are our ancestors speaking. If a screen helps people listen, then it's good. The ethics of visiting Brandberg now hinge on a delicate balance. tour operators must complete rigorous certification programs, learning everything from the angle of morning light that least harms pigments to the proper distance for viewing. Visitors are encouraged to sit quietly for 10 minutes before approaching, a practice borrowed from San tradition, allowing the art to greet them first. The most profound change, though, lies in who tells the story. Where colonial-era placards once mused about Mediterranean origins, new signage shares direct translations of San oral histories. The White Lady isn't presented as a mystery to be solved by outsiders, but as a living testament to a culture that still thrives. The greatest threat today isn't just physical damage, it's disconnection. When tourists treat Brandberg as a stop on a checklist, they miss the deeper rhythm of the place. The White Lady's Cave isn't a museum exhibit. It's part of a landscape where every boulder and dry riverbed holds meaning. Recent initiatives train visitors to recognize these connections, whether it's noting how the painting's ochres match the iron-rich soil below the mountain, or how the White Lady's posture mirrors the angle of nearby celestial events. The goal isn't to keep people away, but to help them see beyond the surface, because the true magic of Brandberg isn't just in what's preserved on the rock, it's in the stories still being written by those who call this place home. Modern technology is peeling back the layers of time to reveal the White Lady as her creators intended. Through advanced three-dimensional imaging, researchers have digitally reconstructed her original palette, stripping away centuries of grime, varnish, and ultraviolet damage to expose vibrant ochres that once blazed like desert sunset across the rock. The results are breathtaking. Where visitors today see a faded figure, the scans show a masterwork of color, her limbs glowing with iron-rich reds, her ceremonial ornaments highlighted in crisp yellow limonite, the negative space around her body filled with deliberate charcoal shading that gave the painting astonishing depth. These aren't guesses, they're pixel-perfect revelations. Using hyperspectral cameras, conservators can distinguish between original brushstrokes and later retouching by analyzing the molecular signature of each pigment, like finding fingerprints in a 4,000-year-old crime scene. One groundbreaking project from the University of Cape Town took this further, employing AI to virtually unpeel the painting in stages. The algorithm identified 7 distinct layers of pigment application across different eras, allowing historians to isolate the earliest version. What emerged was a revelation. The White Lady's famed spear was likely added centuries after her creation, possibly by a later generation reinterpreting her role. Even more striking, her iconic white accents, long assumed central to her identity, were subtle highlights in the original composition, not the dominant feature. The tech also exposed something invisible to the naked eye, traces of a since-faded companion figure beside her, their outline detectable only through mineral residues in the stone's pores. But the real magic happens when these digital reconstructions meet indigenous knowledge. Working with San elders, researchers animated the scans to show how firelight would have played across the pigments. The flickering glow brought hidden details to life, the White Lady's eyes seeming to follow viewers, her ornaments shimmering as if in motion. Elders recognized this effect immediately, describing how their ancestors used such visual tricks during storytelling, the paintings transforming under torchlight to illustrate narratives. This bidirectional exchange, where cutting-edge tech validates oral tradition, is rewriting assumptions. We're no longer just preserving art, we're recovering an entire sensory experience. The implications stretch far beyond Brandberg. These same techniques are now being applied to other contested artworks worldwide, from Australian Wandjina figures to Spanish Levantine cave paintings. Each case reveals a similar truth. What we assume is original often reflects centuries of alteration. The White Lady's digital resurrection proves that even the most studied artifacts still hold secrets, and that sometimes the future is the best tool for uncovering the past. The shifting climate of the Brandberg Massif isn't just altering landscapes, it's rewriting the very chemistry of the White Lady's survival. Rising temperatures, now averaging 2 degrees Celsius higher than 50 years ago, subject the granite shelter to brutal thermal stress. The rock expands under the midday sun, then contracts violently during cold desert nights, creating microfractures that creep like invisible spiderwebs through the pigments. But it's not just heat causing havoc. Unpredictable rainfall, once a rare event in this hyper-arid zone, now drenches the cave several times a year. Each downpour sends humidity levels soaring, activating dormant salts within the stone. As the water evaporates, these salts crystallize beneath the painting's surface, pushing the ancient pigments outward in tiny, irreversible flakes. Conservators have documented nearly 15% pigment loss from the White Lady's lower sections since 2010, areas most vulnerable to capillary action drawing moisture upward from the ground. What makes Brandberg's situation uniquely dire is the double-edged sword of its geology. The same iron-rich quartzite that gives the mountain its rust-colored glow also contains pyrite deposits. When humidity penetrates, these minerals oxidize, producing sulfuric acid that eats away at the binders holding the pigments in place. Similar crises plague other rock art sites, but few face such a perfect storm. Compare this to Argentina's Cueva de los Monos, where stable underground temperatures preserve hand stencils for millennia, or France's Lascaux, sealed in a climate-controlled bunker after mold outbreaks. The White Lady has no such refuge. Her shelter's open face exposes her directly to the elements, making passive preservation impossible. The global parallels are alarming. In Australia's Kimberley region, Wandjina figures once vibrant against sandstone cliffs now fade under unprecedented monsoon cycles. Texas's Seminole Canyon pictographs blister under heat waves that bake the limestone to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. But Brandberg's predicament stands apart because of the White Lady's delicate mineralogy. Where other sites rely on iron oxides resistant to fading, her kaolin clay highlights are especially vulnerable. Laboratory simulations show that at current humidity trends, these white sections could lose structural cohesion within 80 years, leaving only ghostly stains where intricate details once shone. Yet there's a cruel irony here. The same climatic shifts eroding the painting are revealing others. As wind patterns change, they scour away dust from previously obscured niches, exposing unknown sand artworks nearby. Some feature figures with the same elongated limbs as the White Lady, suggesting she was part of a broader artistic tradition. This bittersweet trade-off, new discoveries emerging even as the most famous piece decays, forces difficult questions. Should conservators intervene aggressively, perhaps sealing the cave with transparent membranes, or does that risk altering the microclimate in unpredictable ways? The answer might lie in merging ancient and modern wisdom. San elders suggest applying traditional Nara plant resin as a breathable barrier, while engineers propose nanotechnology coatings that mimic the resin's properties without organic decay. Time is the one ingredient no one can control. Every seasonal shift, every unseasonal storm, brings the White Lady closer to becoming what she's long appeared to be, a fading specter, retreating into the stone from which she emerged. The tragedy isn't just losing a masterpiece, it's watching millennia of human imagination dissolve under forces its creators could never have foreseen. Amidst all the theories about the White Lady's origins, there's one particularly controversial claim that resurfaces every few years: the idea that she isn't ancient at all, but an elaborate hoax. Skeptics point to her unusual style, the odd preservation of her pigments, and even the timing of her discovery as supposed evidence of forgery. Could this iconic figure, celebrated for decades as a masterpiece of sand rock art, actually be a modern fabrication? The answer lies not in speculation, but in science, specifically in the very chemistry of the stone beneath her feet. When experts analyze the White Lady's pigments, they're not just looking at color, they're reading a molecular timeline. The ochres used in her creation contain trace elements unique to the Brandberg's geology, elements that bind with the rock over centuries in ways impossible to replicate artificially. Modern paints, even those designed to mimic natural pigments, leave behind telltale chemical signatures, synthetic binders, industrial contaminants, or uniform particle sizes absent in hand-ground minerals. The White Lady's pigments show none of these. Instead, they exhibit the irregular crystallization patterns and organic degradation expected of ancient materials, with carbon dating placing some layers at over 2,000 years old. Even the varnish applied by misguided conservators in the 20th century sits visibly atop the original paint, a clear chronological marker separating modern interference from prehistoric artistry. Then there's the rock itself. The granite shelter where the White Lady resides isn't a static canvas, it's a living surface, slowly weathering under millennia of wind and sunlight. This process creates a thin, mineralized crust called desert varnish, a natural patina that forms over centuries. Under microscopic examination, the White Lady's pigments are embedded beneath this layer, their edges seamlessly fused with the stone. For her to be a forgery, a fraudster would have needed not only to replicate prehistoric painting techniques perfectly, but also to simulate thousands of years of geological aging, a feat beyond even today's technology. The hoax theory also stumbles over context. The White Lady isn't an isolated figure. She's surrounded by dozens of other paintings, all sharing stylistic and technical similarities. Some lie hidden in deeper crevices, untouched until modern laser scanning revealed them hardly places a forger would bother with. Even the controversial Mediterranean elements cited by skeptics as proof of foreign tampering have parallels in authenticated San art elsewhere. A single anomalous figure might raise eyebrows, but an entire gallery of them points to cultural complexity, not conspiracy. Perhaps the most damning evidence against the forgery claim comes from an unexpected source: Reinhard Mach's original 1918 field notes. Skeptics often allege that Mach himself embellished the painting, but his handwritten journals tell a different story. Detailed sketches show the White Lady exactly as she appears today, down to cracks in the pigment that match current deterioration patterns. Even more telling are his frustrated comments about being unable to photograph her clearly due to fading light, a problem modern conservators have documented as worsening over decades. If Mach had faked her, why would he invent flaws that only time could produce? The persistence of the hoax narrative reveals less about the painting and more about our own biases. Ancient masterpieces that defy expectations often attract suspicion. Think of the endless debates over Shakespeare's authorship or the construction of the pyramids. The White Lady challenges simplistic notions about African art, and for some, it's easier to dismiss her as a trick than to accept that her creators achieved such sophistication millennia ago. But science doesn't lie. Every test from spectroscopy to stratigraphy confirms her authenticity. She's no more a forgery than the mountain that cradles her, both enduring, both real, and both far more mysterious than any hoax could ever be. Among the many theories surrounding the White Lady, one of the most intriguing and contentious suggests she might be connected to ancient Egyptian military expeditions. Proponents of this idea point to striking similarities between her posture and adornments and those of Libyan warrior figures depicted in New Kingdom temple reliefs. These mercenaries, often hired by pharaohs like Ramses III, were shown with distinctive feather headdresses, armbands, and angled bows, details that echo the White Lady's own regalia. Could she be evidence of trans-Saharan contact long before historians thought possible? The argument hinges on a handful of tantalizing clues. Around 3,200 years ago, during Egypt's 19th dynasty, records describe Libu warriors from the west wearing white ostrich feather crowns, a possible parallel to the White Lady's headpiece. Even more compelling are artifacts found in the Niger River Valley, glass beads chemically matched to Egyptian workshops, and a bronze dagger bearing hieroglyphs, suggesting trade networks stretching far deeper into Africa than previously believed. If goods could travel these routes, why not people? Some scholars speculate that lost patrols or deserters from Egyptian campaigns might have ventured south, interacting with San communities and leaving cultural imprints behind. But the theory faces steep challenges. While the Brandberg region shows evidence of ancient trade in ostrich eggshells and copper, no definitive Egyptian artifacts have surfaced there. The similarities in artistic style also rely heavily on subjective interpretation. The White Lady's so-called spear could just as easily be a ritual staff, and her headdress may represent local symbolism rather than foreign influence. More damningly, radiocarbon dates place the painting centuries after Egypt's new kingdom collapsed, making direct contact unlikely. Perhaps the most plausible middle ground lies in indirect cultural diffusion. The Garamontes, a Saharan civilization contemporary with the Romans, operated vast trade networks that connected sub-Saharan Africa to the Mediterranean world. Though they postdate the White Lady by a millennium, their existence proves that ideas could traverse the desert given enough time. Maybe the visual echoes between Brandberg and Egypt aren't the result of a single encounter, but of slow, ripple-like exchanges across generations, a shared artistic vocabulary emerging from sporadic but sustained connections. What makes this debate so fascinating isn't just the possibility of trans-Saharan contact, it's what it reveals about our own assumptions. For centuries, Western scholars framed Africa's history through isolation, dismissing the sophistication of its interregional networks. The White Lady, whether influenced by Egypt or not, forces us to reconsider those boundaries. Her mystery isn't just about who painted her, but about how far the threads of human connection might have reached across the vast, shimmering expanse of the desert. The placement of the White Lady's shelter isn't just a matter of artistic convenience, it's a deliberate alignment with the cosmos. On the summer solstice, as the sun reaches its highest point over Namibia's rugged horizon, a narrow beam of light slices through the cave's entrance, striking the painting with pinpoint precision. For 17 minutes, the White Lady's figure glows as if illuminated from within, her ochre pigments ignited by sunlight in a way that transforms her from static art into a living spectacle. This isn't coincidence. The shelter's overhang angles precisely to capture this celestial event, suggesting her creators didn't just paint the stars, they invited them into the artwork itself. This phenomenon finds echoes in ancient sites across the globe. Stonehenge's heel stone frames the solstice sunrise like a celestial doorway. Newgrange's passage tomb floods with light on the winter solstice, a feat requiring Neolithic engineers to align the structure within a single degree of accuracy. But where these monuments use massive stones to track the heavens, the White Lady's makers achieved similar precision with nothing but keen observation and intimate knowledge of their landscape. The difference is one of subtlety. While Stonehenge announces its purpose with towering monoliths, Brandberg's alignment hides in plain sight, a secret dialogue between rock and sky. What makes the White Lady's solstice connection even more compelling are the symbols surrounding her. Among the other figures in the shelter, several feature circular motifs with radiating lines, designs some researchers interpret as solar imagery. One particularly striking depiction shows a humanoid figure holding what appears to be a sun disk aloft, its rays extending like spokes. These aren't isolated doodles, they're part of a visual language that places celestial events at the heart of San cosmology. Contemporary San elders describe solstices as moments when the boundary between worlds grows thin, when shamans could more easily commune with spirits. If the White Lady represents a bridge between realms, her illumination at this pivotal time takes on profound ritual significance. Critics argue that the solstice alignment could be accidental after all. The Brandberg Massif offers limited sheltered surfaces for painting. But recent laser mapping of the mountain reveals something extraordinary. Out of hundreds of viable rock shelters, only a handful align with solstice light patterns. The White Lady's cave isn't just one of them, it's the only one containing human figures at the exact spot where the sunlight strikes. This selective placement suggests intentionality, a marriage of art and astronomy that transcends mere decoration. The implications rewrite our understanding of sand sophistication. We've long known they tracked lunar cycles for hunting, but solstice alignments imply a deeper engagement with the solar year, perhaps tied to seasonal migrations or resource availability. The White Lady's illuminated moments might have marked times for communal gatherings, rituals, or celestial prophecies. Her creators didn't just live under the sky, they conversed with it, turning stone into a calendar and pigment into a celestial mirror. In this light, she's more than a painting. She's a clock, a altar, a beacon, her silent form holding not just the secrets of the past, but the rhythms of the universe itself. The White Lady's enigmatic presence has transcended archaeology, seeping into the realm of storytelling and popular culture with a grip as enduring as the pigments on her rock canvas. In Namibia, her image graced postage stamps in the 1990s, transforming her into a national icon, a silent ambassador of the country's ancient heritage. But her influence stretches far beyond philately. Novelists have woven her into gripping tales of lost civilizations and time-traveling adventurers. One standout is The Brandberg Prophecy, a thriller by South African writer Jassy Mackenzie, where the White Lady becomes the key to unraveling a modern-day conspiracy tied to colonial-era looted artifacts. The book cleverly blurs fact and fiction, embedding real archaeological debates about her origins into a pulse-pounding narrative that keeps readers questioning where truth ends and imagination begins. Documentaries have long been captivated by her mystery. The BBC's Africa's Lost Wonders devoted an entire segment to her, using CGI to reconstruct the cave as it might have looked millennia ago, bathed in firelight. But it's the dramatizations that truly bring her legend to life. In the German-Namibian film The White Shadow, her story is reimagined through the eyes of a young San girl who discovers parallels between the painting and her own visions. Clips from the film reveal haunting scenes where the figure seems to step off the rock, her movements mirroring the protagonist's shamanic journey, a visual metaphor for the unbroken thread between past and present. Even music has paid homage. Namibian folk rock band Tamboti Tree penned a ballad called Lady of the Brandberg, weaving traditional San rhythms with lyrics that imagine her voice carried on the desert wind. The song's music video overlays footage of the mountain with animations of the painting coming alive, her arms swaying to the beat of a drum. It's a testament to how deeply she's rooted in cultural identity, not as a static relic but as a living muse. The most unexpected adaptation, a role-playing game where players unravel her secrets through puzzles based on real sand symbolism. Designers consulted ethnographers to ensure the game's lore respected indigenous traditions, turning her mystery into an interactive experience. From stamps to screens, the White Lady refuses to be confined to academia. She's become a canvas herself, one onto which each generation projects its own questions, fears, and dreams. Whether as a plot device or a national symbol, her power lies in this very adaptability. A figure ancient enough to feel timeless, yet enigmatic enough to inspire endless reinvention. Recent breakthroughs in portable X-ray fluorescence technology are peeling back the White Lady's layers in ways that would have been unimaginable just a decade ago. Scientists now wield handheld PXRF devices no larger than a cordless drill, yet capable of detecting trace elements in pigments at parts per million sensitivity. These instruments work by bombarding the rock surface with X-rays, causing atoms in the paint to emit unique fluorescent signatures, essentially making the artwork reveal its own recipe. What they've uncovered is rewriting assumptions about the White Lady's creation process. Early scans confirmed the presence of manganese dioxide in her darkest outlines, a mineral whose only known source lies nearly 200 kilometers from Brandberg. This discovery alone suggests elaborate trade networks or pilgrimage routes that connected distant sand communities. But the real revelations come from the latest unpublished data, where researchers employed hyperspectral PXRF mapping to distinguish between overlapping brushstrokes. Beneath the White Lady's iconic form lies a shadowy underlayer, a preliminary sketch made with charcoal that differs subtly from the final painting. The differences aren't mistakes, they're deliberate revisions. Her left arm originally bent at a sharper angle. Her headdress lacked the central prong seen today, and most tantalizingly, scans detected a since-obscured object near her feet resembling a woven basket. These hidden elements suggest the artist, or perhaps generations of artists, refined her image over time, adapting it to evolving rituals or stories. One particularly electrifying find involves microtraces of zinc deep within the pigment matrix. Zinc occurs naturally in the Brandberg's copper deposits, but its presence here is concentrated in specific areas, the whites of the eyes and select ceremonial ornaments. Contemporary sand ethnographies describe zinc-bearing minerals as sacred substances used to brighten spiritual visions during trance states. Could these metallic accents represent intentional enhancements meant to catch firelight during nighttime ceremonies? The emerging hypothesis is that the White Lady wasn't designed for static viewing, but as a dynamic participant in rituals, her details shifting in visibility depending on the angle of torchlight or the time of day. The most guarded findings involve a previously unnoticed cluster of symbols hidden beneath accumulated mineral deposits near the painting's base. Preliminary scans reveal a series of concentric circles intersected by vertical lines, a motif documented in other sand art as a representation of altered states. What makes these symbols extraordinary is their placement. They align precisely with fractures in the rock that channel water during rare rains. When moistened, the porous stone would have made these hidden designs temporarily visible, as if the mountain itself were revealing secrets to those who knew where to look. As researchers prepare to publish these discoveries, one thing becomes clear: the White Lady's story is far from finished. Each technological leap peels back another veil, showing us not a singular masterpiece, but a palimpsest of meaning, a work that grew and changed alongside the people who cherished it. The pigments hold more than color. They're a living archive waiting for the right tools to help them speak again. For the sand communities who have called this land home for millennia, the White Lady isn't an archaeological puzzle. She's a living presence, a spirit who still walks the line between worlds. Elders like Letter 1 C0 Kunta Zami of the Jatonsi describe her as Letter 1 C0 Ku, a rainmaker who emerges during droughts, her raised arms not frozen in time but actively pulling storms from the sky. When the earth cracks with thirst, Zami explains, we sing the old songs near her cave. Sometimes, if the wind is right, you can hear her answer. This isn't metaphor to the sand, it's memory, passed down through generations alongside instructions for which plants to harvest when her image appears brightest at solstice. Academic circles, by contrast, have often treated such accounts as poetic folklore, colorful but unreliable compared to carbon dating and pigment analysis. The disconnect becomes stark when comparing scientific papers, which debate her chronology and artistic techniques, with oral histories that speak of her as a teacher who instructed shamans in dreamwalking. Where researchers see a painted figure, sand custodians see a portal. She's not just on the rock, insists Elder Thana Letter 1 C1 Kumub, her hands tracing the air as if following unseen threads. She moves between them. The mountain is her house, not her prison. This tension between lived tradition and academic scrutiny crystallized during a 2019 symposium in Windhoek when linguist Dr. Zacchaeus Kadhikwa presented a radical proposition. What if sand descriptions of the White Lady as a gateway weren't mystical but technical? His team had documented stories from 7 different San groups, all describing rituals where initiates would fast near the painting for days, then report visions of a pale guide leading them through stone doors to meet ancestors. Neurologists in the audience recognized this as a textbook description of sensory deprivation, induced hallucinations, except the initiates consistently described the same details: the headdress, the posture, even the texture of the paint under their fingertips, though none had touched the actual artwork. Kadhikwa's conclusion unsettled the room. This isn't just art inspiring myth. It's a documented method of knowledge transmission preserved for 40 centuries. Archaeologists counter that such interpretations risk projecting modern ethnographies onto prehistoric cultures. We can't assume today's San traditions are unchanged replicas of Bronze Age beliefs, cautions Dr. Helena van Rensburg, whose isotope studies prove the pigments' local origins. Yet even skeptics concede the alignment between certain trance-induced visions and the painting's features is uncanny. The White Lady's elongated fingers, for instance, mirror sensations described by contemporary San shamans as their limbs stretch into spirit ropes during rituals. Her isolation from surrounding figures matches their accounts of spiritual guides who appear alone at transitional moments. The breakthrough came when researchers stopped treating oral tradition as background noise and started analyzing it as data. Cross-referencing 23 elders' narratives revealed a startling consistency. 9 mentioned the White Lady's ability to hold lightning, a phrase that initially baffled scientists until hyperspectral imaging detected microscopic quartz veins in the rock beneath her feet. When struck by sunlight at certain angles, precisely when summer storms gather, these veins emit brief flashes of refracted light. To the scientists, it's a geological quirk. To the San, it's proof she's still working. What emerges isn't a clash between truth and legend, but a dialogue between ways of knowing. The White Lady's pigments can be carbon-dated while her stories still shape living ceremonies. Her brushstrokes obey artistic conventions even as her image defies them. Perhaps the real divide isn't between academia and oral tradition, but between our need to categorize and her refusal to be contained. As Thana puts it, shrugging at the debate, you dig for bones in the dirt, we talk to the ones who left them. Both find truths, just different kinds. Imagine strapping on a virtual reality headset and instantly standing in the shadow of Brandberg Mountain. The air dry and warm against your skin as sunlight filters through the rocky overhang where the White Lady has watched over the ravine for millennia. This isn't science fiction, it's the cutting edge of archaeological preservation. Teams from Namibia's National Museum and tech innovators have collaborated to create immersive VR experiences that transport users into the Tsisab Ravine with startling realism. Using high-resolution, 3-dimensional scans captured by drones and ground-based LiDAR, every crack in the granite, every ripple of pigment on the rock face has been preserved digitally down to the millimeter. The result, a chance to examine the White Lady's delicate brushstrokes up close, to circle her cave at dawn when the solstice light first touches her outstretched arms, all without ever risking damage to the fragile site. What makes this technology revolutionary isn't just its precision, but its ability to reveal hidden dimensions of the artwork. In the VR environment, users can toggle between different lighting conditions with a flick of a wrist. Switch to ultraviolet mode, and suddenly faded symbols invisible to the naked eye glow along the cave walls, spirals and grids that may have served as ritual maps or celestial calendars. Adjust the simulation to night and watch how firelight transforms the painting. The White Lady's kaolin clay highlights flicker as if alive, casting moving shadows that give her limbs an eerie sense of motion. These aren't artistic liberties, they're scientifically grounded reconstructions based on burn marks found near the site and San accounts of torchlit ceremonies. The project's most poignant feature lies in its collaborative design. Working with Hatem and Juthonsi elders, developers integrated oral histories directly into the experience. Select a hovering icon shaped like a traditional storytelling bead, and a voice recounts the White Lady's role in rainmaking rituals, the cadence and dialect preserved exactly as shared by community knowledge keepers. Another might play a rhythmic chant used during trance dances, its vibrations synced to pulsating visuals that mimic the shamanic experience. This isn't just virtual tourism, it's interdisciplinary time travel, blending hard data with living tradition in ways that respect the painting's cultural context. Beyond preservation, the VR model serves as a detective's toolkit. Archaeologists can digitally slice through pigment layers to study earlier versions of the artwork, revealing how her form evolved over centuries of retouching. A recent breakthrough came when researchers virtually scraped away calcite deposits near her feet, uncovering a previously unnoticed cluster of handprints in faded red ochre, likely the signatures of those who revered her. Meanwhile, educators are using the platform to simulate degradation scenarios, showing students how humidity or sunlight slowly alters the pigments over decades, driving home conservation's urgency through visceral time-lapse visuals. The implications ripple far beyond Brandberg. If successful, this model could safeguard other vulnerable sites, from Australia's Wandjina caves to Spain's Altamira bison, allowing the public to explore them without accelerating their decay. But perhaps the most profound impact is democratizing access. For Namibian schoolchildren who may never afford the journey to the remote ravine, or disability advocates who have long highlighted archaeology's physical barriers, VR offers an unprecedented invitation. The White Lady's Cave, once reachable only by grueling hikes over scorching shale, now exists in classrooms and living rooms worldwide, her secrets no longer guarded by geography. Yet for all its sophistication, the technology underscores what can't be replicated. No headset can conjure the scent of wild sage carried on the desert wind, or the way the granite thrums with heat under your fingertips at midday. The developers wisely acknowledge this gap. Their VR experience begins and ends with a reminder that the simulation is but a shadow of the real thing, a tool to inspire deeper respect, not replace pilgrimage. After all, some mysteries demand more than pixels. They ask for humility, for the quiet understanding that some truths reveal themselves only when you stand barefoot on ancient ground, the weight of millennia pressing against your back as the White Lady's gaze meets yours across the centuries. The struggle to preserve the White Lady mirrors challenges faced at legendary sites across the globe, each battling time, climate, and human curiosity with radically different tactics. Take France's Lascaux Cave, where over 1 million visitors in just 15 years caused algae blooms so severe the cave was sealed permanently in 1963. Authorities opted for extreme isolation. A climate-controlled replica cave nearby absorbs tourist traffic while the original paintings rest in carefully monitored darkness. The approach stands in stark contrast to Namibia's solution for Brandberg, where controlled visitation continues under sand supervision, blending modern limits with indigenous stewardship. Then there's Jordan's Petra, where Nabatean tombs carved into rose-red cliffs suffer from salt crystallization eerily similar to Brandberg's. Yet here, conservators apply nanolime treatments, injecting liquid calcium hydroxide into the stone to strengthen its matrix without altering its appearance. What unites these disparate strategies is their shared vulnerability. All three sites, despite their fame, operate on shoestring budgets, reliant on unpredictable grants and tourism revenue. Lascaux's million-dollar monitoring system falters during funding gaps, while Petra's caretakers ration protective silica coatings for only the most endangered facades. The White Lady faces an added hurdle. Unlike UNESCO World Heritage sites with established donor networks, Brandberg's conservation relies heavily on under-resourced Namibian institutions. Recent breakthroughs in low-cost solutions offer hope. Researchers testing bioconservation methods using bacteria to stabilize pigments have seen promising results at Spain's Altamira, where microbes naturally secrete protective calcium carbonate. Early trials on Brandberg's lesser-known paintings show similar potential, though scaling up requires international investment currently diverted to higher-profile sites. The funding disparity reveals uncomfortable truths about which histories we value. For every dollar spent preserving European cave art, sub-Saharan African sites receive less than 10 cents, a gap that echoes colonial era biases about where significant archaeology resides. Yet when Namibia partnered with German institutes to digitize the White Lady using photogrammetry, they proved innovation thrives where need is greatest. Their open-source three-dimensional models now guide conservators from Australia to Argentina, demonstrating how targeted support for one site can uplift preservation worldwide. Advocates propose a radical rethink, global heritage treated as collective responsibility rather than national burden. Imagine an international task force pooling cutting-edge research adapting Petra's nanolime for Brandberg's granite, or sharing Lascaux's microbial inhibitors with sites in India's Bhimbetka caves. The technology exists, the missing piece is coordinated funding. Some suggest a heritage tax on replicas and virtual tours with profits directed to origin sites. Others champion mandatory corporate contributions from industries benefiting from antiquity-themed advertising. The White Lady's greatest lesson might be this: preservation isn't about choosing between science and tradition, but recognizing how each site's distinct needs reflect our shared humanity's fragile, beautiful diversity. Centuries after her creation, the White Lady of Brandberg continues to defy simple explanations, not because the truth is lost to time, but because her story has always been more than pigment on stone. She's been called a Mediterranean wanderer, a shaman mid-trance, a rain-making spirit, even a clever hoax. But peel back these layers of interpretation, and what remains is a mirror reflecting our own biases. The colonial scholars who insisted she couldn't be African, the modern scientists who quantified her pigments but overlooked her cultural heartbeat, the tourists who see a photo op where elders see a living ancestor. Each projection says more about us than her. What makes her mystery endure isn't the lack of answers, but the weight of the questions she forces us to ask. How much history has been distorted by the lens of those who recorded it? Why do we strain to attribute sophistication to anyone but the artists themselves? The White Lady's journey from colonial curiosity to indigenous reclamation isn't just about correcting the record, it's about who gets to hold the pen that writes history. When San elders today speak of her as Letter 1, C0, Ku, the Rainbringer, they're not reviving a dead tradition. They're reclaiming a narrative thread that was never truly severed. This isn't just Brandberg's story. From Egypt's looted artifacts to Native American remains displayed as specimens, archaeology has too often been a tool of extraction rather than understanding. But change is possible. Collaborative projects like Brandberg's VR preservation, where scientists and San elders build the digital archive together, show how ethical research can amplify marginalized voices instead of silencing them. Real progress starts when we listen to communities not as informants, but as co-authors of their own past. So where does the truth lie? Perhaps not in choosing one theory over another, but in sitting with the discomfort of not knowing and recognizing that some mysteries resist resolution because they're meant to. The White Lady's power has always been in her ambiguity, her ability to be warrior and healer, human and spirit, past and present. She invites us to wonder but also to unlearn. To question not just who painted her, but why we've been so determined to fit her into boxes she was never meant to occupy. Now it's your turn. After centuries of debate, countless scans, and generations of stories, what do you see when you look at her? A lost traveler, a vision, something else entirely. Drop your theory below and remember, the most fascinating artifacts aren't the ones that give us answers, but the ones that teach us how to ask better